A reporter insulted Yoko Ono. John Lennon did that, and the entire studio stopped. London, 1971. The air in the BBC studio was thick with cigarette smoke, the hum of cameras, and a barely concealed tension. John Lennon sat beside Yoko Ono, facing a panel of journalists for a live television interview. They were promoting their latest collaborative work, a defiant and often controversial exploration of art, politics, and their intertwined lives. But the journalists weren't interested in art. Not really. They were interested in the spectacle, in the controversy, in the woman they blamed for breaking up the Beatles. Yoko Ono, an avant-garde artist, a conceptualist, a woman who dared to challenge conventions and stand shoulder to shoulder with one of the world's biggest rock stars. To the British press, she was an enigma, often a target. And John, ever the protector, felt the hostility radiating from the panel. He knew the game. He knew they would try to bait him, to provoke him, to get a sensational headline. But he also knew their true target was often Yoko. He squeezed her hand under the table, a silent promise of solidarity. Yoko, composed and serene, met the journalists' gazes with an unblinking intensity. The interview began with the usual questions about their music, their activism, their life together. John answered with his characteristic blend of wit and weary honesty. Yoko spoke thoughtfully, her voice soft but firm, articulating her artistic vision. Then a veteran reporter, known for his sharp tongue and cynical demeanor, leaned into his microphone. His name was Arthur Finch, and he saw himself as a guardian of traditional British values, deeply suspicious of anything avant-garde or un-British. "Mr. Lennon," Finch began, his voice dripping with condescension, "your recent work, particularly with Miss Ono, has been described by many as, shall we say, less accessible than your previous efforts. Some might even call it self-indulgent. And frankly, Miss Ono's contributions often seem to lack the melodic structure and lyrical depth that your fans have come to expect. Isn't it true that her influence has, in fact, diluted your artistic output?" The room went silent. The other journalists shifted uncomfortably. Finch had not just criticized the music. He had directly insulted Yoko, implying she was a detriment to John's genius. John Lennon, the man who had faced down presidents and pop critics, felt a cold fury rise within him. He looked at Arthur Finch, his eyes narrowing. What happened next would become a legendary yet largely unrecorded moment. A clash of wills, a battle for respect, and a reporter who thought he could insult Yoko Ono with impunity was about to learn a very painful lesson. John Lennon's relationship with Yoko Ono was the most profound and transformative of his life. She was his artistic partner, his spiritual guide, his intellectual equal. She challenged him, pushed him, and loved him in a way no one else ever had. But to the world, especially the British press, she was often seen as the other, the exotic, avant-garde artist who had broken up the Beatles, the scapegoat for the end of an era. John, having grown up with a deep-seated insecurity and a fierce loyalty to those he loved, became Yoko's fiercest protector. He had witnessed the misogyny, the racism, and the sheer prejudice directed at her, and it fueled a righteous anger within him. He had always been quick-witted, sharp-tongued, capable of cutting down an opponent with a single, devastating remark. But when it came to Yoko, his protective instincts were primal. An attack on her was an attack on him, on their love, on their shared vision. Yoko, for her part, possessed an extraordinary inner strength. She had faced criticism and ridicule throughout her career as a conceptual artist. She understood that her work and her relationship with John would always provoke strong reactions. She rarely retaliated directly, preferring to meet hostility with calm defiance. But John saw the toll it took, the subtle slights, the overt insults, the constant questioning of her worth. He saw the pain behind her composed exterior. Arthur Finch and the reporter represented everything John despised about the establishment press: its narrow-mindedness, its cynicism, its inability to grasp anything beyond the conventional. Finch saw Yoko as a novelty, a distraction, an artist of dubious talent. He believed he was simply asking a tough question, exposing what he perceived as the truth. He had no idea the depth of the bond he was challenging. He had no idea that by insulting Yoko, he was striking at the very core of John Lennon's being. John had endured years of public scrutiny, of being dissected and analyzed. He had learned to deflect, to charm, to occasionally lash out. But this was different. This was personal. This was an attack on the woman he loved, on the artistic partnership that defined his new life. The studio lights felt hotter. The air grew heavier. The other journalists held their breath, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. They knew John Lennon's temper. They knew his loyalty. And they knew that Arthur Finch had just crossed a line. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. John Lennon's response was not immediate. It was a slow burn. He didn't shout. He didn't swear. He didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he turned his gaze from Arthur Finch to Yoko. He looked at her, a long, tender, unwavering look that spoke volumes. It was a look of profound love, respect, and solidarity. Then he slowly, deliberately reached out and took Yoko's hand, intertwining their fingers. He turned back to Finch, his eyes now blazing with a silent fury that was far more terrifying than any outburst. "Arthur," John said, his voice low, almost a whisper, but cutting through the studio's silence like a razor. "Let me make something perfectly clear." He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. The other journalists leaned forward, captivated. The camera operators froze, unsure whether to zoom in or pull back. Yoko Ono," John continued, his grip on Yoko's hand tightening, "is the most important artist I have ever worked with. Her vision, her courage, her intellect, they are unparalleled, and her influence on my music, on my life, has been nothing short of revolutionary." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving Finch's. "To suggest that she has diluted my artistic output is not only ignorant, it's an insult to everything I believe in. It's an insult to art itself." Finch, initially smug, now looked visibly uncomfortable. He tried to interject, to defend his question. "Mr. Lennon, I was merely—" John cut him off, his voice still quiet, but now laced with an undeniable steel. "No, Arthur, you weren't merely anything. You were dismissive, you were prejudiced, and you were wrong." He paused again, letting his words sink in. Yoko remained silent, her gaze fixed on John, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. "The Beatles," John continued, his voice now carrying the weight of history, "was a chapter, a beautiful, incredible chapter. But Yoko is the book. She is the future. And anyone who can't see that, anyone who chooses to cling to the past and dismiss the present, simply doesn't understand what art or life is truly about. He then did something completely unexpected. He stood up, pulling Yoko gently to her feet beside him. He looked directly into the main camera, addressing not just Finch, but the millions watching at home. "If you want to understand my music now," John declared, his voice ringing with conviction, "you have to understand Yoko, because without her, there is no me. Not the me you see today, and not the artist I am becoming." The entire studio stopped. The camera operators, the sound engineers, the producers. Everyone was stunned into silence. John Lennon had not just defended his wife, he had redefined his entire artistic identity, publicly and unequivocally, in front of the world. And in that moment, Arthur Finch, the cynical reporter, found himself utterly, completely silenced. Arthur Finch, accustomed to dominating interviews with his cutting remarks, found himself utterly disarmed. John Lennon's quiet, unwavering defense of Yoko, coupled with his powerful declaration of their artistic unity, had shattered Finch's carefully constructed narrative. Finch tried to regain control, to pivot to another topic, but his usual confidence had evaporated. He stammered, his questions losing their bite. The other journalists, and sensing the shift in power, began to ask more respectful, more thoughtful questions, some even directed at Yoko, acknowledging her presence and her contributions. John, having made his statement, relaxed slightly, but his gaze remained sharp, a silent warning to anyone who dared to disrespect Yoko again. He answered the subsequent questions with a renewed sense of purpose, his answers imbued with the conviction of a man who had just defended his deepest truth. Yoko, throughout this exchange, remained a picture of quiet dignity. She didn't need to speak. John's words and his actions had spoken for her. Her presence, her calm strength, amplified the power of his defense. The incident, though not widely reported in the sensationalist press, became a talking point within the industry. Those who were present in the studio and or who saw the live broadcast understood its significance. It was a moment when John Lennon, the global icon, chose to use his immense platform not to promote himself, but to elevate and protect the woman he loved. It was a public declaration that their partnership was not a phase, not a distraction, but the very core of his being. It challenged the prevailing narrative that Yoko was a destructive force, instead presenting her as an essential, transformative influence. For John, this wasn't just about defending Yoko, it was about defending his own artistic integrity. He had found a new voice, a new direction, and Yoko was inextricably linked to it. To attack her was to attack his evolution, his truth. The studio, which had begun as an arena of interrogation, had been transformed into a space of profound declaration. John Lennon had not just stopped the interview, he had stopped the entire studio, forcing everyone to confront a deeper truth about love, art, and respect. And in doing so, he had subtly, yet powerfully, begun to unravel the prevailing, often misogynistic narrative surrounding Yoko Ono. The interview continued, but the dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Arthur Finch, visibly chastened, retreated into the background, his journalistic swagger replaced by a quiet discomfort. The other reporters, sensing the new atmosphere, treated Yoko with a newfound respect, asking about her conceptual art, her activism, her unique perspective. John, having drawn his line in the sand, was now expansive, articulate, and passionate. He spoke about the importance of collaboration, about breaking down barriers between art forms, It's about the need for artists to challenge the status quo. He spoke about Yoko's influence on his songwriting, on his political awakening, on his very understanding of what it meant to be an artist. "She opened my eyes," John declared, looking at Yoko with an almost reverent gaze. "She showed me that there's more to life than just three-chord rock and roll. She showed me that art can be a weapon for peace, a tool for change, a way to connect with the deepest parts of humanity." Yoko, in turn, spoke with quiet eloquence about their shared vision, about the power of their combined voices, about their commitment to peace and social justice. She spoke about the challenges they faced, the criticism they endured, but always with a sense of unwavering purpose. The climax of the interview wasn't a shouting match or a dramatic walkout. It was this profound, public affirmation of their unity. It was John Lennon, the legendary Beatle, using his immense cultural capital to elevate his wife, to defend her honor, and to declare, unequivocally, that she was his equal, his partner, his muse. It was a moment of raw, unvarnished truth, delivered with a conviction that silenced every cynic in the room. The studio, which had started as a hostile environment, had been transformed into a testament to their love and their shared artistic journey. The cameras continued to roll, capturing a moment that would resonate far beyond the confines of that London studio. It was a moment that revealed the true depth of John Lennon's character, his fierce loyalty, his unwavering integrity, and his profound belief in the power of love to transcend prejudice and narrow-mindedness. And in that moment, the entire studio, and indeed a segment of the viewing public, was forced to confront their own biases, to reconsider their preconceived notions, and to witness the undeniable power of a man standing up for the woman he loved against all odds. The immediate aftermath of the interview was a mix of shock and quiet admiration. While some tabloids still clung to their sensationalist narratives, a significant portion of the media and the public began to view Yoko Ono in a different light. John's powerful defense had a ripple effect. It forced a conversation about the misogyny and racism she had faced. It challenged the simplistic narrative of her being a band-breaker and instead presented her as a formidable artist and an essential partner to John. For John, the incident solidified his commitment to Yoko and their shared path. It was a public declaration that he would stand by her no matter the cost. It empowered him to further embrace their avant-garde collaborations, their political activism, and their unconventional lifestyle. Arthur Finch, the reporter, found his reputation subtly tarnished. His condescending approach was seen by many as unprofessional, and his inability to recover from John's rebuttal became a quiet legend within journalistic circles. He continued his career, but with a noticeable decrease in his usual aggressive style when interviewing artists. Yoko, though she never sought vindication, felt the shift. The relentless, often cruel criticism didn't disappear entirely, but it softened. More serious critics began to engage with her work on its own merits, rather than through the lens of her relationship with John. The interview became a touchstone for those who believed in their partnership, a moment of triumph against the forces of prejudice and misunderstanding. It demonstrated John's unwavering loyalty and his profound belief in Yoko's artistic and personal worth. The studio, once a place of confrontation, became a symbol of their resilience. The incident, though not as widely publicized as some of their other controversies, left an indelible mark on those who witnessed it, a testament to the power of conviction and the courage to defend what you believe in. John Lennon, the man who had stopped an entire studio to defend his wife, continued his journey with Yoko, creating music, art, and a legacy that would forever challenge conventions and inspire generations. But the ripple effect of that moment in London continued to spread, slowly, subtly, changing perceptions and fostering a deeper understanding of their extraordinary bond. New York City, December 8, 1980. John Lennon was murdered, his voice silenced, but his legacy and the story of his unwavering defense of Yoko continued to resonate. The incident in the London studio, though a quiet moment in the grand narrative of his life, became a powerful testament to his character. It revealed a man who, despite his own flaws and struggles, possessed an unshakable integrity when it came to those he loved. Yoko Ono, in the decades that followed, became the fierce guardian of John's legacy, ensuring his music and his message continued to reach the world. She also continued her own artistic journey, and her work finally receiving the critical recognition it deserved, a testament to her own resilience and vision. The story of the reporter who insulted Yoko Ono and John Lennon's powerful response is not found in every biography. It's a hidden truth, a whisper in the annals of rock and roll history. But for those who know it, it speaks volumes about the man John Lennon truly was. Not just a rock star, not just an activist, but a deeply loyal, profoundly loving human being who would not tolerate disrespect towards the woman who was his world. He didn't just stop the interview, he stopped the entire studio. He didn't just defend Yoko, he redefined their partnership for the world. And in doing so, he left an unseen ripple of change that slowly, subtly began to shift perceptions, proving that sometimes the most powerful statements are delivered not with anger, but with unwavering conviction and profound love. The smoke-filled studio in London is long gone, but the echo of John Lennon's defense, his quiet fury, and his profound love for Yoko still resonates. A timeless reminder that true strength lies not in tearing others down, but in lifting them up. The unedited tapes of that interview, if they still exist, hold a moment of raw, unscripted truth, a testament to a love that defied convention. But the true legacy isn't in the tapes. It's in the enduring power of a man who stood up for his love, and in the woman who finally received the respect she deserved. The end. If this story about loyalty, conviction, and the power of standing up for love against prejudice moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. And share this with someone who needs to hear that true strength lies in defending those you cherish. What moment taught you the most about standing up for someone you love? Tell us in the comments below.